On this Monday night, too hot to handle. Scorching heat engulfs much of Western North America. The records being shattered, the impact on people, and the fingerprint of climate change.
There's no question that we're being impacted by the 1 degree Celsius of global warming that's already happened.
Hope dwindles in Florida.
We never want to give up hope, but we also understand that a lot of time is going by.
The search for bodies and for answers in that collapsed condo, Canadians among the dozens unaccounted for. Plus, new insight into what caused that deadly Canadian military helicopter crash off Greece. And go Habs go! Hockey-loving Canadians hanging their Stanley Cup hopes on Montreal.
Global National with Dawna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with the extreme heat baking a huge chunk of Western North America. The Pacific Northwest and stretching across into Western Canada is in the grip of a record-setting heat wave. And it's not even July yet. Tens of millions of people are caught in it. Heat warnings are in place from British Columbia to Western Manitoba and into parts of the Northwest Territories and Yukon. South of the border, Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, and California are also under extreme heat warnings right now. This level of heat for such a long period of time is unprecedented. Dozens of temperature records have been broken. The village of Lytton, BC, reached 46.6 degrees Celsius yesterday. That's a new record in Canada. It's extreme weather like this that climate scientists warn is becoming more common. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But we begin with Robin Gill and our top story on the impact of these dangerously high temperatures.
Lytton, BC isn't just the hot spot in Canada.
We've been the hottest place in Canada. That's why we're called the hot spot.
It's the hottest place in the country ever.
And it's one of the hottest days on record, probably.
Actually, it's on track to break the national temperature record for a second day. Abbotsford, BC is expected to hit 50 degrees with the humidex.
I think this will be the hottest I've ever seen it.
A heat dome is trapping hot, sticky air over much of British Columbia. The province only gets this oppressive, sweltering weather for a few days in July or August, but not like this, and it's only June. So the malls are busy for those needing to cool off.
It's pretty rough, especially trying to go to sleep.
It's too hot to stay home.
For those stuck at home, paramedics are experiencing a 25% increase in calls for heat-related illnesses.
Heat stroke can be a medical emergency, and people they've been not out and about. So we're seeing earlier than normal heat waves that are unprecedented.
This is a way to beat the heat. It may look like the kids are playing hooky, but classes have been canceled because of the risk of heat stroke at recess.
We were still wondering whether or not we should bring him, if we would send him anyway, so they kind of made the decision for us.
It's too hot in the kitchen, so restaurants are cutting their staff loose for the day.
Priority for us is our staff. So everybody had the day off today just to stay home and be safe.
The mountains nearby aren't a haven from the heat. The glacier is melting faster than expected and the rivers are rising, bringing the risk of flash floods.
This is pretty unusual to have it with runoff. Usually it's associated with heavy rains.
The blue skies over BC's farming community have replaced the rainy June gloom that is the norm this year, and the crops are taking a hit.
We've had some pretty cold, wet Junes the last few years, and this June has so much heat. A lot more days approaching 40 degrees.
BC Hydro, the province's power utility, says even electricity records are being broken because of the demand to power air conditioning and fans. And that has led to power outages in the Vancouver area. Keep in mind that 60% of the people in British Columbia don't even have air conditioning. And if they did, that would be a greater toll on the grid. Dawna?
Robin Gill in Burnaby, BC. Thanks. Climate scientists are increasingly concerned that global heating is happening so fast it could lead to cascading effects that will be hard to recover from. Earlier this month, a leaked draft report from the International Panel on Climate Change warned of a series of thresholds beyond which recovery from climate breakdown may become impossible. Well, to help connect the dots between this latest heat wave and the fingerprint of climate change, I'm joined by Noah Diffenbaugh. He is a climate scientist at Stanford University. Noah, you're in California. I think now 42 of 58 counties are in drought conditions. Extreme weather events like this are talked about a lot, often as just one-offs that we have to endure until things get back to normal. Is that how we should be looking at this latest heat wave?
Well, we're now in a climate where these kinds of extreme events are much more likely and much more severe. And the conditions right now are a great example. What's happening in BC and Oregon and Washington and Northern California, we have the kind of atmospheric pattern that produces heat waves, but it's a very severe version of that, and it's producing very severe heat. We have a lot of evidence now that when these weather patterns do occur, they produce more severe heat and a broader, greater spatial area of severe heat. And that's one of many kinds of extremes that we have clear evidence are increasing in frequency and severity around the world.
And you say, I think California is in effectively a new climate. Are we approaching a threshold?
Well, California is clearly in a climate that's different from the climate of 50 or 100 years ago when our water infrastructure and water management systems were designed and built. It's a climate where we're much more likely to have protracted, warm, dry periods with more severe drought, more severe wildfire conditions, and to still have those periods punctuated by wet conditions, but wet conditions that produce much more runoff and flood risk as a result of the much less reliable snowpack that we have now because of the global warming that's already happened. So it's very clear that California and much of Western North America are in a new climate. It's a climate that continues to change.
You know, the takeaway for some people when they hear this is that we're doomed anyway, so what's the point? What do you say to those people?
Even if the Paris Agreement is successful, holding the global temperature below 2 degrees is still more global warming and climate change than we've already had. Failing to hit those UN Paris goals means 3 degrees of global warming or more. There's no question that will be more severe than what we're already experiencing now. So really, dealing with climate change really means finding ways to both, supply the energy needs of the world while also limiting the amount of global warming. And we know that requires reducing emissions and then also adapting not just to the climate change that's already happened, but to the climate change that will occur in the future.
Noah Diffenbaugh at Stanford University, thanks.
Like many Canadians, living through COVID-19 over a very long year made me step back and reflect on what matters to me most. It's quite simple. 2 things: my kids and climate change.
That is Liberal MP and Minister of Infrastructure Catherine McKenna announcing today she's leaving politics. McKenna was also Environment Minister. She handled the Trudeau government's National Climate Action Plan, including imposing a price on carbon emissions. David Akin is with me from Ottawa. David, most MPs never make it into cabinet. McKenna had a seat at the table since she got elected 6 years ago. What more did she say about why she's giving it up?
Oh, it was definitely the kids, Dawna. She came back to that time and time again. 3 school-age daughters, 1 about to go to university.
I don't have many years left with them at home, and I want to spend more time with them.
McKenna also resisted any suggestion she had to leave the Trudeau cabinet to better focus on fighting climate change.
100% no.
McKenna is also one of a handful of female parliamentarians that has withstood a tremendous amount of gender-specific abuse, both on social media but also from fellow parliamentarians. Former Conservative MP Jerry Ritz once called her Climate Barbie. That was a phrase that Ritz picked up from far-right websites. Ritz would apologize, but the abuse would continue and even resulted in vandals attacking McKenna's office.
That's just noise. The people want you to stop doing what you're doing. They want you to back down. And guess what? We didn't back down on price on pollution. We doubled down.
McKenna was adamant she was not being bullied out of politics and, in fact, urged more women and girls to run for office.
Do it! And when you do it, don't be afraid to run like a girl. And I'll be there cheering you on.
Still, the experience McKenna and others have had can be a significant barrier for women considering entry into politics.
In her press conference today, she encouraged young women and girls to get involved in politics, and I agree, they should be there and they should take up space. But we need political parties and others in the political community to ensure that they're safe at work. Otherwise, they won't stay.
Now, McKenna is not stepping aside as infrastructure minister. She's offered to stay on in that role so long as Prime Minister Trudeau wants to keep her in that job, or at least until the 44th general election. Dawna?
David, there's this lingering question that former bank governor Mark Carney might need a riding to run in, and McKenna's is it. Is there anything concrete to back that up?
Well, there certainly are a lot of Liberals who would like to see Mark Carney run somewhere in Ottawa, but to be honest, we're not even clear if Carney himself wants to run, and Carney wasn't speaking to reporters today. In any event, McKenna's riding of Ottawa Centre has some pretty deep NDP roots. It leans to the left. It's Ed Broadbent's old riding, for example, and McKenna herself had to unseat a very popular New Democrat incumbent when she first won in 2015. And one more thing, the provincial riding of Ottawa Centre, which happens to be the riding that the Parliament buildings are in, it's also NDP. So the fact that McKenna will not be on the ballot definitely puts this riding into play, and I can tell you the NDP is already scheming to retake it. Dawna?
Okay, David, thanks. In Florida, people living in concrete high-rises are wondering about the structure and the safety of their buildings. The governor of Florida vows to find out what caused the 12-story condo in Surfside to collapse. An engineering report in 2018 warned of serious structural flaws in the concrete. For now, though, the focus is still on search and rescue, though hope of finding survivors is fading. 11 people are now confirmed dead. 150 are still unaccounted for. Jackson Proskow reports from Florida tonight.
Answers are somewhere under the rubble, where rescuers continue to dig, often by hand, finding only the smallest glimmers of hope.
We're going to continue and work ceaselessly to exhaust every possible option in our search. I repeat, the search and rescue operation continues.
In the pile of shattered concrete and reinforced steel, searchers have found voids that could be big enough for people. So far, there are no signs of life.
Hope is what keeps everybody going. And
firefighters like Maggie Castro regularly brief distraught families at a nearby hotel, where buses continue to shuttle relatives to and from the site so they can look, pray, and understand.
For some of them, they saw what they needed to see to perhaps start processing information that has been difficult to accept up to this point.
4 Canadians are among the 150 people missing. Information is scarce for almost every single affected family. Searchers recovered photos and a birthday card belonging to 92-year-old Hilda Noriega. That's all they found.
My grandmother, she definitely was a very powerful soul. And if she's underneath that rubble alive, it'll be a miracle of the ages. And if she's not, I know that her soul is in heaven.
Miracles happen, and whenever we came, we find and we see miracle.
Rescue workers from as far away as Israel have joined the search at the request of families, bringing expertise and hoping to bring comfort by honoring the traditions of the town's large Jewish community.
In the end of the day, they would like to close the story, and we're here to help and to try them to do it in the right way.
Each passing minute narrows the window for successful rescue. Searchers say the rubble is so precarious, they simply cannot work any faster.
It's just heartbreaking, you know. I mean, I just had to take a knee and just think about the families that are waiting.
Jackson, the cause is, of course, on everyone's mind. There was an engineer's report in 2018 pointing to problems with the concrete in the building. What more do we know?
Well, Dawna, that report warned of major structural problems. Yet 1 month later, the chief building official from Surfside met with the condo association and told them that the building looked fine. Something just isn't adding up about that. And the mayor of Surfside says that an investigation will need to happen in time. He's ordered all documents related to that building to be made public immediately. Says an investigation will happen when search and rescue concludes. And Dawna, tonight, those victims' families, they're headed back to the scene for more private visitations to that site.
All right, Jackson Proskow in Surfside, Florida. Thanks. Reflection instead of celebration. Coming up, rethinking how we mark Canada Day.
I want to be able to wish everyone a happy Canada Day, but I cannot. This year, Canada Day should be nothing more than a day of reflection. I will not celebrate the birth of a nation that destroyed our children. Instead,
that is Ontario MPP Sol Mamakwa. There is lots of discussion about Canada Day this year, whether we should reflect on the past rather than celebrate. There are a range of views. A Leger poll conducted for Post Media asked, do you feel, with all the questions about Canada and its historical record, it would be best to cancel Canada Day this year? 77% of respondents to this poll said no, though it was done before the discovery on the Cowessess First Nation of up to 751 unmarked graves. Heather Yurex-West is in the nearby city of Melville, Saskatchewan tonight, where the City Council has decided now is not the time to hold a big Canada Day celebration.
Roland Crow began attending the Maryvale Residential School as a day scholar when he was just 7 years old.
If we asked a question, we would be just severely disciplined, and when I say severely disciplined, we would be beaten.
When the Cowessess First Nation announced it had discovered 751 unmarked graves near the site of the Maryvale School, Crow says he wasn't surprised. It's why he says he will not be celebrating on July 1st.
Personally, I won't be dancing in the streets celebrating Canada Day. I feel better about spending time in one of our own communities, looking back at the past as little as we can.
Near the Cowessess First Nation, the city of Melville, Saskatchewan, has decided to cancel its usual Canada Day parade and fireworks display this year as well. Many members of the Cowessess First Nation work or go to school in this city. The mayor says it felt like the right thing to do.
We could not celebrate when our neighbor, when the people we know that of our community, of our extended community, are hurting, are suffering, are grieving.
Instead, the mayor says residents are asked to put a candle or an orange shirt in their window as a way to honor the children who died in residential schools.
Honestly, I think it's a good choice. Just with everything going on, I think it's a good choice that they're actually canceling it.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't believe in changing a holiday for something that's historic and relevant to our community.
Canada Day celebrations have also been cancelled in a number of cities across the country, from Victoria to Halifax. For survivors like Crow, the show of solidarity means a lot.
I think that's very kind of them, and it's a show of respect of the abuse we've taken, and I commend them for it.
The Cowessess First Nation has asked for privacy this week as it resumes the survey of the burial site. It says it wants to ensure that no grave sites are missed before proceeding with the work of identifying all that are buried there. Dawna?
Heather Yurex-West in Melville, Saskatchewan. Thanks. Still ahead, a new report on the cause of that deadly military helicopter crash off Greece. A software glitch is being linked to the deadly helicopter crash that killed 6 Canadian Forces members off the coast of Greece last year. A new report suggests the crash of the CH-148 Cyclone helicopter might have been prevented if the pilots were given better, clearer instruction and training. It says the accident was the result of a number of factors, including aircraft manuals that contained information that may have been confusing or misleading. Manual inputs to flight controls overrode the automation system, and the helicopter crashed into the ocean while attempting to return to HMCS Fredericton. The Corgi has spoken. Next, Habs fans revved up for the Stanley Cup final. A lot of Canadian hockey fans are hoping this picture gets an update. 1993 was the last time the Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup. So long ago, plenty of Habs fans weren't even alive. Well, the team's got another chance now to win their 24th Stanley Cup. Game 1 of the final against the Tampa Bay Lightning is tonight in Tampa. As Eric Sorensen reports, getting this far hasn't been easy.
It is a happy coincidence that as the Montreal Canadiens make an improbable challenge for the Stanley Cup, pandemic restrictions have eased enough to allow for collective enthusiasm. Young fans are brimming with optimism.
I hope they win. They are going to win.
You think so?
Yes.
Yet the Canadiens were the worst of 16 teams to make the playoffs. They were hard hit by the pandemic. The coach got COVID and is still waiting to be allowed back behind the bench. It's hard to fathom Montreal even got this far.
I'll appreciate everything after when we're done, especially if we win.
There was a time when there was no if we win in Montreal.
Here is number 19, Larry Robinson.
From cannonading drives to scintillating saves, the halcyon days when the Habs barely had room for another Stanley Cup banner, Canadian-based clubs dominated pro hockey for decades.
The Montreal Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup for the fourth consecutive time.
From the original 6 teams in 1940 through expansion, Canadian teams won 35 Stanley Cups in a span of 50 years, led by Montreal's 19 championships, followed by Toronto, Edmonton and Calgary. In the last 30 years, though, the Stanley Cup was won north of the border once, and that was Montreal a long 28 years ago. A lot has changed since then. Whether lower taxes or better weather, Tampa epitomizes the now talent-rich teams south of the border. But there is something about this Montreal team led by Carey Price that's reminiscent of the year Patrick Roy backstopped the Habs to their last Stanley Cup.
It's really been a remarkable run. The Canadiens just seem like a team of destiny right now. This is something that nobody expected. It was similar in '93 when they won the Cup.
We're just trying to make our own story here.
Players like Joel Edmondson sense something special. And so do fans, that the most dominant franchise in hockey history can somehow also be a Cinderella story. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Dawna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada is Reed Lake Territorial Park in the Northwest Territories. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.